Link for ticket will be posted in the chat today here. Grab your ticket if you haven't yet. So let me introduce myself first. I'm Irene. I'm the founder and CEO of Lift Women. We are a female-led fintech startup, social enterprise, and Australia's first women-focused funding marketplace, dedicated to supporting female entrepreneurs to raise initial equity-free capital to start their own business and live a life to its full potential. Our mission is to ensure every woman has equitable access to capital and opportunity to be all they can be. If you are a female founder looking for funding, feel free to reach out to me or my team. We would love to chat and see how we can help you. So today, we'll be talking about the future of female funding. So this is such an important topic because as a founder of Lift, and having been in banking and finance for over 20 years, I see firsthand how hard it is for small business, particularly women-led business, to get funding to start and grow their businesses. So some statistics to share with you before we start the panel is globally, 70% of women-led business has inadequate or no access to finance at all. And globally, currently 22.3% of venture capitals actually go to women-led startup. And in Australia, our country, the number is even worse. It's only 0.7%. So I think today, our panelists who are investment experts championing different funding pathway will share their experience and insight around what we can do now and in the future to really increase the women's access to capital and bring back the gender balance in funding. We will also cover practical tips and steps on how to source, connect, and secure the right funding for your business at the end of the webinar. And if you have any ideas or thinking or thoughts around how we can improve this situation to support female entrepreneurs, or if there are any questions, please feel free to pop into our chat today and we will facilitate that. And hopefully we can answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So unfortunately, one of our panelists, Rebecca, is feeling unwell today, so won't be able to join us, but we have three amazing panelists here. We are well covered. So let's get started. All right. How about I would like to start our webinar today by letting the panelists to introduce themselves. Well, so maybe let me start with Liza.
Hi everyone, it's great. It's so exciting to be here. It's such an important forum. My name's Liza Boston. I'm a she, her. I'm coming from the beautiful Wadawurrung lands and waters where I recently got stung by a stingray. I had to get that in before anyone else. I've been a tech entrepreneur for over 25 years now. And when I started my journey as a female founder, I don't even think the term entrepreneur existed. So I feel like a bit of a kind of godmother in the space. I've built and scaled high tech, high growth businesses all around the world. Most notably, I have my own patent, launched a livemusic.com in the UK, US, Europe, South America. And since then, I've made some exits and become an angel investor myself with a really keen focus on supporting female entrepreneurs. And I've moved into fund management where I've been looking at how to create frictionless capital for women in tech, specifically high tech, high growth companies. And so now I kind of sit between the two. I work in a venture studio model where I realized, yes, I can fund, but I also love being on the tools. So if you're a woman out there who's looking to build and grow her company, and you need scaffolding or co-foundership or that kind of stuff too, like I can go deeper into the tech stuff, the product stuff. So I'm really excited to be here today. This is my life. This is my passion. And I pushed recently very deeply into the Web3 stratosphere, DAOs, NFTs, DeFi, metaverse. So I'm really just as excited as Web 3.0 as I was for 2.0 and 1.0. So I'm really keen to really excite everyone about the space and the future. And I think that right now that, the cost of women not getting into the space is greater than the cost of us doing it. So I'm here to motivate, inspire, and I'm really humble and proud to be on the team. So thanks for having me, Irene.
I'm excited to have you. And currently the trend of Web3 and NFT fundraising and all these probably could be the future of access, one more access to capital. So I'm very excited to hear everything about it later. So thank you, Liza, to be with us today. So how about you, Katie?
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Heathcote. I work for Investment New South Wales. My background's actually in superannuation, believe it or not, but I was so excited by financial tech, I decided to get a gig at government and help founders basically access global markets. So I've kind of moved from being sort of financial tech expert. Now I'm broadening my scope to digital games, clean tech, fintech, cybersecurity. So I help New South Wales companies scale into international markets by reducing friction, shortening timeframes, and giving you access to networks that you probably wouldn't be able to get as quickly on your own. So we have 55 offices overseas with locally engaged staff. So we plug you in and help pursue your dreams of global expansion. That's me.
I love that. Love that. And thank you for bringing different perspective, like from the government. And I believe like in Australia now, every state is trying to work very hard to support female founder and startup ecosystem. So it's great to have you today. And over to you, our man ally, Jolene.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for having me. And yes, I feel very lucky to be the only man on the panel. So I'm one of the startups that Katie has helped over the years. So my name is Johnny Wilkinson. I'm the managing director and co-founder of Equitize. Equitize is a leading investment platform in Australia and New Zealand. One of the ways we operate is through equity crowdfunding, which is a new way with some new laws that we help change to allow everyday investors to back great startups. And I'll get into a little bit more detail later, but it's a fantastic way of democratizing access. And by virtue of that, it means a lot of those sort of groups or people that traditionally had difficulty in access to capital can now get funded and grow their businesses. So excited to be a part of the panel and talk about a subject obviously very close to my heart.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. I think alternative funding pathway is very critical at the moment, alongside like angel investing and venture capital. So I'm very excited to have you here. So let's get started. I guess my very first questions will be around like, how do we close this huge funding gap for female founders, and what can we actually do more and do better in creating access to capital for women, especially like early stage founders? So maybe I would like to get a conversation started with our man ally, Johnny, because you're leading alternative funding pathway, crowdfunding. So share with you a little bit about your personal journey. There's like you're a startup founder, obviously very successful startup founder. So what led you to start Equitize? And how does equity funding really work? And what do you think this kind of non-traditional funding like crowdfunding will be able to support and help fixing this gender gap in the future?
Yeah, so I started Equitize with a friend of mine from university in 2014. We went through a fintech accelerator. So I had worked in traditional finance for Citibank in stockbroking. I was a bit sick and tired of that world, and more to the point, I've always found sort of startups and high growth companies to be far more exciting and interesting. There was a global movement and change of regulations and laws around the world moving towards equity crowdfunding, and we saw an opportunity and thought that Australia was a fantastic market to look at doing that. So that's kind of what led me to start the business. The vision and the passion is to make early stage capital markets more efficient and more accessible and open for all participants. So we're not trying to displace or get rid of angels or venture capital. We want to work alongside of them, and we want everyday investors to be able to invest in these sorts of businesses, because traditionally, very hard to get access as an angel investor, and to invest in a venture capital fund, you need to write a very large check, and it's not realistic for the majority of people, and you traditionally a high net worth or what's deemed a sophisticated investor. So the ability to open up all those channels and allow everyday investors like ourselves to invest in great companies is a fantastic avenue for making it more accessible for anyone, anywhere, to be able to, attract the funding they need to grow their business. Interestingly, I don't have the global statistics in that. I've forgotten them, but equity crowdfunding does well and truly skew towards minorities that traditionally haven't been able to access funding. And specifically for women, I think it's something more like 20 to 30% globally for equity crowdfunding. It allows companies with female founders to access funding. And I did actually just run the numbers before for Equitize. For our last 12 equity crowdfunding raises, we had 50% of them had at least one female founder. So that is pretty telling in that we are able to really open up and attract capital and let women access groups and networks and customers or whoever it might be related to their business to attract capital. At the moment, we've got one on, it's called GGWP, Good Game, Well Played. There's 3 founders, 2 of them female. So it's great to see that we're able to help those sorts of businesses, and they can tell their story in a different manner. They're not having to approach traditional angel investors or venture capital, which can be difficult. And particularly, a lot of people who haven't traditionally had the access, and that is privileged white men like myself, find it hard to maybe get the confidence or get the exposure or access and get their foot in the door to be able to pitch those types of investors. And even then, sometimes when they do, there might be some other structural issues that make it a bit harder for them to invest. But our model is really amazing and open and transparent for allowing anyone who can tell their story and who has a network and a group of potential investors to tap into them. So something that, it's pretty exciting, pretty impressive. And what we're doing is hopefully helping support a lot of women in accessing funding.
That's amazing. Thank you, Johnny. I think for some of the audience might not know about crowdfunding. So because Lift Women is also a crowdfunding platform, we are reward-based. So Equitize is equity-based crowdfunding, but basically crowdfunding means you allow the crowd and the community to get involved with a relatively, lower interest level, like a minimum amount of investment. So I think the good thing is what we see is crowdfunding is mainly a US and UK dominant market. And I think it's good that you bring it into Australia and also lobbying the regulations to be able to make it happen here. So well done, and thank you very much. Before I pass on to our next guest, I actually want you to explain, would you like to share with the audience a little bit more like how it actually works, like the crowdfunding in a very simple way?
Yeah, so in very simple terms, it's like investing in any company. You're getting shares, equity, and so you are a shareholder. It's like investing in any sort of startup or unlisted company. It is a bit riskier, but also often is able to present greater returns. So it is allowing everyday people to become like an angel investor and invest in those sorts of deals. So with the companies, we get approached by hundreds, maybe 1,000 companies a year. We go through and select the companies that we think are most suitable and appropriate to raise money. And so we help those companies go through a process on putting together a lot of information, producing an offer document, and then we do some due diligence and processes on our side and check off and sign off and put the deal up. In doing that, what we do is we go out to our networks and the company's networks and help market and distribute the offer and let people come and invest. And often it's an investment is available from $250. So it's supposed to be quite accessible, but it's still an investment. We want people to think about it as a proper investment. So it's a process, and it's all online, it's all digital, a way of letting people participate and access a new, what we kind of call a new asset class, because most people haven't been able to access this sort of thing traditionally.
Great. What I like is we're introducing new non-traditional funding pathways, just to give women or give other founders options. So how about let's move on to government assist funding. So Katie, over to you. You've been supporting startups to scale nationally and globally throughout your career. So what do you think is the reason why female founders are not getting the funding, and what programs are in place to support female founders? Share with us.
Sure. So I think it just goes beyond. Often people would just blame females in school, they're not interested in STEM subjects, and therefore that's why they don't take careers in engineering and science and things like that. But I think this is a global problem, and Lithuania has more engineers and scientists. Actually, 60% of the population are women. So I feel like we can kind of maybe debunk that a bit. I think it comes down to unconscious bias, gender bias, and structural inefficiencies. it's definitely better than it was 10 years ago. I wouldn't meet anyone that looked like me that was a tech founder. And it was definitely a rare person if I did, or they were American or British. They weren't Australian. So I think there's just a need for more diversity. The people that are signing the checks in venture capital there needs to be like females behind that, not just people that are part of that whole group. I think that will help the situation. But I mean, this is a common thing. It's and I'm sure everyone is aware that often at times the questions that female get asked when raising capital are quite different from men. And that's not because they have a set sheet of questions they ask each. It's just something that plays, as part of that unconscious bias. That's my probably belief. I'm leaning towards that reasoning personally. I think we often, females, how do we prevent the fire instead of promoting the amazing stuff that a founder is doing? So I think often at times it's just in the nature of the female to get asked that. I don't know why. But yeah, I feel like that's probably where I sit in that camp. In terms of how we're supporting female founders, we've got some really cool stuff the government is doing. We basically, first of all, announced a Carla Zampatti Female Founder VC Fund. Carla Zampatti Venture Capital Fund, which details will be released soon. I'm hoping before Christmas. So that's just for women-led startups. And as of June this year, the New South Wales government announced 30 million to support women in small business and entrepreneurship. Super cool. And then lastly, previously we've done a pre-accelerator program for sort of pre-minimum viable product female founders. So I think 150 female founders have gone through that program in its 3 stages. I'm just waiting on details if it's going to continue or not. But yeah, so I think it's definitely improving. And Cutthroat Venture just released some stats that investment in female funding is on the steady rise, which is great, but there's so much more to do.
Yeah, I think the key problem, I agree with you, is the subconscious biases. And there are statistics show like 68% of the investor actually prefer to be pitched by male voice. And I think they just ask different questions if you're female founders or if you're female founders. They will tend to ask like, how can you not losing your money if you're female founders? So I think there are a long way that we need to do. But I think it's good to see like a lot of state government has been trying their best to promote supporting the support to female founders. So like Launchvic, so we Lift Women are very fortunate to be one of the recipients of the Alice Edison funding from the Launchvic government, Victorian government, to support Victorian female-led startup. So I think it'll be good to see like a lot of government rising to the stage to take the lead to support female founders. And then other things I'm quite advocate for and I'm very supportive is we need to have men to support us and understand where we're coming from and the way that we run business. And try to bridge the gap. So for us, like whatever we organize events, we will love to have men ally, like Jolly. We want to bring in men's perspective. So I think that's my take for female founders as well. Whatever you do, even though we are women supporting women, but it's important that we bring in men's perspective and see how we can work together to support each other better. So thank you very much, Katie. I think I think if the audience want to know more about the New South Wales funding support, I think they can reach out to you. Right. Yeah. So, and then I would like to bring over to Liza. So Liza, you've been Airtree Venture Capital Fund Explorer. You are angel investor yourself, and you've been in like a godmother of the female entrepreneurship. So I have so much to learn from you here. But I also particularly like to know more about like the new trend of NFT funding, Web3, and could you tell us a little bit more about these and your view about like female founders funding?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I'd have to caveat what I'm saying is that I'm an absolute activist to the space. I mean, I've been in the game 25 years. I've started off, I've moved through the ranks. I've been through VC, government, accelerator, the whole gamut. And I've realized that the more powerful you get as a female entrepreneur, the more kind of threatening it becomes, I think, to people that hold the keys to the capital. And I really noticed it at a later stage in my career that I think early on there's unconscious bias and there's this and that, but then I think the further up you get, when you become a powerful, credible threat, then, you know, there's really big structural barriers. And so my understanding is that we need to access capital at the throat. So we need from the very top, from the GPs to the LPs to all the way through. You know, I am very cognizant at the moment. There's a massive amount of intergenerational wealth transfer happening. I see it amongst my peers, and I know this to be the case across the country. And I think that we need to get really, we need to inform women how to invest in alternative asset classes and to take maybe higher risks and different kind of diversified portfolio perspective. So it starts from the investment piece. So I've been actively looking around at a GP level, and at that level, the unconscious bias is so real. Like I often hear, oh, look, we just don't get the deal flow. Like the reason that it's only 0.7 is because it's just not enough female founders, and it's absolutely not the case. I have deal flow, an extraordinary amount because they're my people, and I speak and I have a community, and I'm deep. I'm with women a lot, so I think that unconscious bias is a huge thing, touching on what Katie and Johnny said, but also it's a structural bias. So what I did, I as an activist, what can we do about this? So I chose 100 of the top women that I know from all walks of life. So scientists and doctors and mothers and nurses. And I created a group called Women in Web3 because I see this this evolution of the internet to be the perfect opportunity to redefine the space. Like really, we've got an opportunity here to unmake and to remake our world. Like it's that simple. And there's been no greater time in the history of the world than for women to be able to come together and to utilize the tools of the new economy. And the tools of the new economy are threefold, in my opinion. The first is community. So by simply gathering my women and creating a kind of informal discourse on, what is Web3, what are DAOs, what are NFTs, what's DeFi, how does it all work? It was a really kind of interesting process in the sense that I think education is the first thing. So really getting up to speed, not being afraid, being fearless and bold, and coming together. So together we're strong. And if I look back in my career, I was always, in my very early career when I was a young woman, I thought, oh, this is, I'm always getting funded. But then I look back and I realized I always had a male co-founder. And so, I think there's that, but I'm also not about creating silos, and I'm not about women just talking to each other in the powder room. I think to make change, we invite men into the room, but in minority. And I know that, and I'm at my best when I have a board and there's some powerful men in there, but they're not the majority. And that's what we need to see a lot more of. So I'm very, very much about cap tables that have very equitable LPs or limited partners or investors. I think that working at a GP level to really activate deal flow, like I would welcome anyone in this audience to hit me up any day, anywhere, anytime, and I will help you. It's about finding the smartest people in the room and just chasing them down to get the knowledge. So I think that it's really interesting. Like I'm grappling now with, I think it's a real blended model. Like if I was to launch a business now, I'll be looking at everything. I'll be looking at the government funding. I'll be looking at the crowdfunding. I'll be looking at wholesale products. I'll be looking at building communities. And I remember when I first reached out to Irene and was, blown away by what she's been able to achieve through cultivating a community, cultivating education and awareness. And I think that, we can't even imagine what the future is going to look like yet, but we have to be building it. And so that's where I'm at.
I can't agree with you more. We have to, as a women, there are challenges, there are limitations, but we have to open our doors to different pathway and find a way. And how can we do that is we connect with different peoples we join summit like this, connect with different, funding pathway, crowdfunding, Web3, NFT, government. Yeah, so I always it's advocate for that. So the more that we reach out, the more that we know, and you've got to be blown away by a lot of other access to capital. And to me, like reward crowdfunding, like what Liv do is, I always say you can do a parallel with other activities. Like you can do a crowdfunding, like reward-based crowdfunding, but at the same time applying government grant or reaching out to Katie to see if there's any program that she can help, or even you can plan your next, Web3 or NFT fundraising. So I think it's just surround yourself by a very supportive network and different people doing different things. You will never know what will come to you. So, but before we go on, I would actually like, Liza, can you talk about like Web3 NFT? I believe not all the audience know what it is, or, would you be able to like share with us what it is, and in a very, very simple language and quick, like 2 or 3 sentences?
Well, I think the main thing to understand from an investment perspective is that your investors are your customers, are your community, which is such a beautiful feeling. Like when you become part of a NFT group, or you start to participate in DeFi, or so essentially what's happening is that the your actual customers become your investors. I think that's the simplest way to understand it, and so that creates this incredible ability for you to have dialogue, to create utility, to there's this concept of decentralization of decision making, where everyone in the room can have an equal voice, like the real concept of democratizing where capital flows. So just imagine you can build a community of your friends, like the women that I spoke about, from all different walks of life, and we can kind of come together on a social impact issue, or whatever the business issue is. It could be anything from climate to retail or whatnot. And we all decide that are we going to invest. We all mint in, and we purchase smart contracts using cryptocurrency. And then what you can do is look at that pooled capital, and the group can choose in a very democratic way how to deploy the capital, what's going to be of the best utility for the shareholders. So you become this really active and engaged shareholder, and it's really, really good fun. And
do you see it moving a little bit outside art and gaming, because currently it's quite focused on the art and gaming industry? Will they move beyond that?
Actually, look, I'm working in my venture studio on some really exciting brand partnerships, in fashion, in beauty, in retail, in health. And so, what it's doing though is like, because I have a strong background in the arts, in live music, and I have like really big networks in entertainment. The artist is really important, the community is really important, and the tech's really important. So it's kind of a convergence. It's a renaissance, and it's literally, if your business isn't thinking about it right now, you should be. I think that, in Australia, I mean, last weekend there was a big blow up on Twitter around Aussies in Web3. It's still very alpha. It's a good time to learn, get on podcasts, get on Twitter. Everything's kind of happening on Twitter and LinkedIn and Discord. And I just think that, we're building the future that we've imagined. It's different to Web 2. Web 2 was very much kind of, Facebook, Netflix, all basically where digital assets were a service, and now you can actually purchase them and own your own data and all that kind of interesting stuff. So
fascinating.
Wanted to jump in quickly. I was also listening to a podcast on Web3, and like, first of all, I think it's amazing we also in this stone age have many options for funding. It's not just venture capital. You can look at crowdfunding and possibly Web3, although I feel like with Web3 it's kind of going through a difficult teenage phase at the moment with the current economic cycle, like almost an emo phase, and I think it's going to come good, but it's still a little bit risky. But I'm so excited by its potential. I just love that characterization that but I feel like we'll come out of this winter period and almost, but at this time, Liza is absolutely right. It's a great time to learn about the space because it's definitely the future, and I think it's going to provide a lot more equity and fairness to founders.
And that just on that, Katie. So I was in San Fran in 2007 at the launch of Web 2.0, and there's exactly the same thing happened. Everyone said, you're barking mad. This is never going to happen. And I was in London for Web 1.0. So every evolution of the internet, what happens is there's hype, there's bust. And right now, the good companies are surviving. So if you've got a really good business model, like you need to have you need to model, you need to have great products, great team. VCs are investing in fiat cap tables and crypto cap tables. Like it's a really good time to build and to invest in a bear market. And there's in VC circles, like we say, there's a zero-sum chance this is not going to be the future. So we need to understand, women need to understand this. We need more women in the space, a lot more women. So it's a really, really good time, Katie, to upskill, to listen, to learn, to tune in. I can drop a couple of projects I'm working on in the chat. We can invite you in. We've got one called the Sisterhood Club, where we're doing a huge ed tech program, and just experimenting. Like even the investors at the moment in Web3 don't understand it. Like no one's an expert. No one's got a 10-year CV. It's been around for half an hour. So why not capitalize on that and take absolute thought leadership and really come together and pave the way? It's exciting.
I think it's the educational piece. Like we're all learning. Like when I first started crowdfunding, we also try to see how we can change the narrative that people will more understand it and understand the risk, understand how it works. So I think it's the educational piece, but it's going to be an interesting topic in the future. I believe so. And so Katie, like we're speaking about the future trends. So I know you work a lot with the government and different programs to support female founders. What do you see like the trend are? What's going to be the future of supporting female, and do you see like any supporting programs coming up and that can support female?
Yeah, so sorry, I probably answered this a little bit before, but just the fact that I'm seeing a lot more state governments, I think Queensland, Victoria, in making investment vehicles. We've just announced one with Carlos and Patty. I think there's more awareness that there is a problem here, and what can we do to help bring everyone, not just females, on the journey, adapting their pitches to, sound out, is this like, am I being asked the right thing here? But also making sure that everyone is across like how we can make things better. And I just, as I was saying, I'm excited by Web3 and its potential. It's gonna it's just coming through like a difficult period, but also I feel it'll be interesting how it moves into different intersections and verticals. Like we're seeing, for example, I love bands and music, or maybe I can go backstage through Web3 if I buy an NFT into the band or something. Like it's just, there's so much possibilities now to get closer to the projects you love, even with the social cause, saving whales or whatnot, or just music and art. Like I feel like it's a really exciting time for women to kind of get on this train, because there's a way to cut out a lot of the biases. We can be way more transparent with Web3.
Yeah, and I also think like in different states or across Australia, there are a lot of accelerator programs that's particularly designed for early stage founders to understand more about these, kind of ecosystems and funding, access to funding and networking. So I think it would be great for female founders to just take up any opportunity in front of you and just apply the course, or just get to know people and reach out. So and over to you, Johnny. Like what's next for Equitize, and is there any trend that you foresee in this crowdfunding space?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of trends. It is all relatively new. It wasn't until the beginning of 2018 that we could start doing what we have been doing, and it got off to a really good start, and then was a bit sort of impacted by COVID. But yeah, look, equity crowdfunding is growing. It's continuing to grow. It's making up a larger portion of early stage capital markets, and will continue and also move later on in sort of funding stages. So yeah, look, it's an exciting thing. Just sort of echoing some of what has been said. Getting out there, getting involved, getting started, leveraging a lot of things in the ecosystem. The world's a very different place, and starting a business in Australia with the support around accelerators and incubators and investors and lots of other resources is come a long way, and is much better than when I started eight years or so ago. So, get out there and try, and often that is sometimes part of the issue. Some women don't feel empowered or as though they have the opportunity to go out there, and as I say to anyone that's talking about starting something, just do it, just try it, just see what happens, and go from there and learn, and build from that.
And there's one thing I'm very interested to know is I know Equitize was one of the companies that negotiate with the government to issue the equity crowdfunding license in Australia. So would you tell us a little bit more of this story? How did you do that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was quite lucky in a sense because through a couple of different avenues, I was able to get exposure and access to the government to help put some pressure on and lobby both the government and the opposition at the time to get the laws changed. So there had been a review and an intended change of the laws to allow for it, but that kind of got disrupted when there was a change of government. We actually went to New Zealand for a couple of years, got set up and licensed there before coming back and lobbying the government in Australia, because when the change of government occurred, it was obvious that the legislation was going to be put on hold, and we'd quit our jobs. So we'd started building a platform and had everything going. So we moved to New Zealand, got the business set up and licensed there, and then came back here and lobbied the government. The two avenues that I sort of went via to access the government, one was through an investor, and through the Financial Services Council, we could get some help. And one of the guys actively involved in the Financial Services Council, their chief economist, a guy called James Bond, was actually an advisor to Kevin Rudd. So we got access and were able to go to Canberra with that. Also, I was involved with the formation of FinTech Australia, which is a industry body for FinTech, and by virtue of that and some other things, I was put on an advisory panel, FinTech advisory panel to the government. So was able to get a seat and get there and help form and work with the government to craft the legislation around equity crowdfunding. So that was a tremendously interesting, I won't say exciting, but an eye-opening experience. I won't ever get involved with politics for all the money in the world. I have a lot of time and respect for people that work in government, and Katie's obviously got nerves of steel and a lot of patience. But it was an eye-opening experience, but we were very lucky to be able to get some of that access so that we could push the government to realise that this was an urgent and obvious policy agenda that they should utilise to allow access to capital. So, yeah.
That's great to know. And I think my takeaway is everything is possible. Nothing is impossible. So watch out the future. There's a lot of trends coming, and I think the government is working hard to kind of evolve as well. So I think it's a great kind of indicator. So thank you, and it's great. So
Sorry, I'll just add on that note. I mean, it's a very hard thing to get access to government, and people talk about lobbyists or whatever. Ed Husick, who was on the opposition when I was going through all of this, was a great ally, and he's now the Minister for Science and Innovation. So if you have something you want to get in front of government, reach out to him in his office. You might need to be persistent and try again. But going via those sorts of channels are really effective ways of trying to get in front of government and policymakers.
Yeah, excellent. So for us Lift Women, we just received the funding from Victorian government. So they've been actively encourage us to reach out to government to collaborate and see whatever that we think can help female founders. So I think the good thing is I think the whole country is acknowledging the issues and they're working on it. So for the audience here, if there is any thoughts you think we might be able to help or do better, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We'll all be very happy to be your voice and to speak up and collect feedback and information to share with the government. So no guarantee here, but I'm just saying we might possibly have some channels here. So, and every webinar, I would love to be able to give our audience some practical tips to take away, so they can really add on after that. So yeah, they got inspired, what government is trying to do, but what can they do to access to capital? So maybe how about I start with Liza? Like we talk about like raising funds via NFT and Web3. So is there any advice that you're giving to the audience with thinking about this aspect? And also as an investor yourself, what are you looking at when you're investing?
Yeah, look, I think that we've just got to be bold and really, reach out, start collaborating more effectively, lift the gaze. Don't think 100 grand, think 100 million. I think that, look, practically get really chisel, get your business model right, like get a really great offering, and look at all the different channels. I think government helps to a point, but I'd be looking really at these alternative asset classes. So go speak to VCs, look at the crowdfunding options, really start to join some Web3 communities, get involved, be curious, listen to podcasts, like really never take no for an answer. That's one of the things that I think I learned in my career that no never means no. It means not today. And so if you are unsuccessful, you need to ask why, and then you need to go away and chisel it and come back again. I think that resilience and persistence counts. At the same time, I think like we all need to be working at all levels at all times, and to really make this behavioral change. At the same time, I love that the concept, lobbying government, making structural changes. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot of hard work to be done. And I'm in the business. I'm starting secret underground groups now where like to kind of counter the unconscious bias. It's like, okay, well, how do we unlock this capital at the highest level so it does start to flow? So look to your community, use your networks. Women are great at networking. Women are great at understanding how to communicate. And yeah, I just never give up. I think that's the key, and to believe. This is our birthright. We were born to lead. I think that there's going to be a tidal wave, I think, of incredible innovations that Web3 is going to unlock. We're so close now to getting much closer to being able to access a large amount of capital. So give me a call anytime, and I'm happy to help.
Yeah, and I think, Liza, you make a great point. We just have to keep going and never give up. And a lot of success stories out there, like Canva, they've been rejected 100 times by VC. And look at them; they are, the biggest female-led startup globally now. So I think you just have to keep going, be persistent. But another great point is, but you've got to reflect every time what you can do better. And
and it's about knowing the game, learn, understand, like what's the fund, how is it structured, who are the investors, like go deeper, go be strong. Pick some doors in.
I know. And how about you, Katie? So what's your advice to female founders that are looking to start in?
Yeah, I feel like Liza covered off a lot in that. But yeah, I guess just kind of we don't expect people to crack Hollywood in one day. So you've got to expect rejection as part of the game, and the tenacity that comes with that, the hustle, the networking, the endless coffee meetings, but also being aware that we are kind of a little bit of the underdog, but we can't make that as an excuse. We need to be aware, like make sure we have polished pitches, elevator pitches ready to go, and really do your due diligence on who your customers and partners and investors are. Don't assume that when you go to the US, people throw money at you, that they're the right fit. You don't want a bad apple going in your cart, so to speak. So, because then you're in with them for the long haul. So I think it's just as important to take your time and just as like recruit slowly, recruit the people that you want to support your business really slowly, and then you've got a better path to success. But yes, reflection and a bit of grit, blood, sweat and tears. I don't think Melanie from Canva got to where she was without a lot of rejection, as you said.
And I love your point that be prepared. So just get your elevator pitch ready anytime and just be prepared, because you might meet your investor the next day on the roll when you grab coffee. You never know. So yeah, it's a great point. So how about you, Jenny? So what's your piece of advice for female founders looking for funding, and when will they know their equity crowdfunding ready or not yet? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, so look, I've identified in my time that passion and perseverance are the two things that are the mark of any successful entrepreneur. So you need to believe in what you're doing, and you need to be willing to sacrifice and work hard to get there. And, you need to be willing to accept rejection. Men as well as women, obviously men probably feel a little bit more equipped to go out and ask and pitch and put themselves out there and deal with rejection a little bit differently. But it's a part of the game. You've got to talk to, on average, something in the order of 50 or 100 investors to get one to say yes. So just understand that that's a part of the model. Don't be disheartened by that. Learn from it. Be prepared, evolve your pitch. Pitching is a skill that's learnt. Very few people have it come naturally. So again, it's like, when you're at school, they teach you to get up and speak in front of the class, and you practice, you write a speech, and then you refine it and you say it out loud and all those sorts of things. So pitching is the exact same thing, and listening and watching people as you pitch to them and see how they react or what they say after you've pitched is important to how you do that. But yeah, look, equity crowdfunding is effective in a fashion where it can be one-to-many instead of one-to-one. You can tell your story in a different format. All of our offers have a video with them, so it's a good way of storytelling or being able to tell an authentic version of what you and the company are about and what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, equity crowdfunding is an effective way and does open up different options, and you can tap into the story and the vision and the passion and why you do something. We raised money for a company recently, Monday Distilling, and Sam, one of the founders, she talked about, it was a non-alcoholic drinks company and why she felt passionate about that and why she started the company, and delivered a very authentic version of herself. Also talked about having the company and having a toddler, and she was 8 months pregnant, and she gave birth a few days after we finished the raise, and talking about what that meant and how, being a business owner and being able to do some of those sorts of things allowed her that opportunity. So yeah, you can really lean in and be authentic and talk to your experience and background. But yeah, like anyone, to get there and to get that position, you've got to work hard. So, the types of companies we work with are established and have some level of traction and validation, and then often a relatively strong network, whether it be their friends and family and customers or whoever it might be, that they can go out and invite to invest in their business.
Great. I want to add to the point that Johnny just mentioned is the being authentic and being yourself and the story around your startup. So that's what I see the most on Lift Women is we are a platform for women founders. And so particularly like all the projects on our platform has a very emotionally connected story behind. They do the startup, they do what they're doing because of some personal lived experience and stories. And that's what makes them different. And it feels like a very safe and authentic place that gathering all the meaningful and purposeful stories and make your startup really, really purpose-driven. So I really love that. And the second point I want to add is, Johnny made a great point, is don't be afraid to ask. What I observe is the female founders, they usually have the fear to ask. and ask more. Like men will come out and ask you like, I want 1 million, I want 2 million, but women will say, will 100,000 be too much? You know. So I think that the point is, don't be afraid to ask, just believe in what you're doing. And I've got a couple of projects on the platform that the women start their projects and then they say, I don't think anyone will back me. But then they successfully raise over 12,000, you know, in 4 weeks and have over 100 backers. So I think it's just, you got to believe in yourself and you think you are adding value to the community and societies and making a difference. So that's the most important things. And make the ask, let people decide whether they're going to support you or not. So yeah, so it's a wonderful insight and feedback. We still got like around 10 minutes left. So, and we've got some interesting questions here for some of our panelists. So maybe I will start with Johnny. So an audience asked like, well, speaking of the future trend, so what's Equitize place Web3 and blockchain companies? Are they able to raise on your platform, and will they be able to use NFTs for this?
Sure. So it's a bit of an involved question and answer. So the short answer is, at the moment, there is nothing stopping a company from raising money on our platform and issuing tokens for their equity. There is a way of doing that. It is not fully blockchain enabled and our platform is not on chain, but we could raise money for a company and they could issue their shares and have other parts of their business on the blockchain. The technology and everything around that is not quite there. It's still evolving. One of the really crucial points around this is equity crowdfunding happens in a regulated fashion. So we got laws changed to allow us to do the equity crowdfunding. And so retail investors are now, excuse me, now able to invest in these companies. Nothing would change technically around doing that for the NFT if it was an Australian company that it was all related to. It gets a bit complicated when you start going beyond that. And if the company's not Australian based, they can't raise money under the Australian equity crowdfunding regulations. They can theoretically raise money online. In 2017, there was sort of a really big surge in ICOs, initial coin offerings, which are kind of like a form of equity crowdfunding for blockchain. But then that went and sort of fizzled out because there was a lot of sort of dodgy projects, or that, you know, it was still very much a learning phase. So that's now evolving and getting towards NFTs and Web3. But yeah, look, there's still a long way to go, and to do it in an end-to-end compliant fashion is very involved. We're looking at it, but it's not imminent. So yeah, we can do things in that space, and we can conceivably raise money for a company that is doing something, and they could issue shares on the blockchain. But the regulations in our platform and the technology and ecosystem aren't quite there to fully facilitate end-to-end NFT sort of Web3 stuff.
Yeah, great. So, and the second question is, perhaps I can answer a little bit and Johnny can chip in, is how do you decide which platform to use in crowdfunding? So for me, I would say, like, first is you've got to understand crowdfunding as a whole picture. Like, there are different types of crowdfunding: donation crowdfunding, reward-based crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, and debt-based crowdfunding. So Equitize is equity-based crowdfunding. Lift Women is a reward-based crowdfunding, which is equity-free funding. So it is going to depend on, first is what's your stage, and are you looking to give away equity? Are you ready? Or are you just looking for like pre-ordering or pre-launching your businesses? So I think first is to understand different types of crowdfunding platform, different types of crowdfunding. And then when you look at the platform, it will then be, you have to do some research around like what kind of platform this platform support. Majority of this industry, some platform might be particularly interested in supporting or good at supporting art, music, and some platform will be supporting different other industry, because they do have specialized crowdfunding platform days supporting a particular industries. So I think there are some studies and research has to be around that. But in general, I think it's a good alternative pathway to get started, to understand more from now. Johnny, would you like to chip in a little bit about these top questions?
Yeah, look, there are, I think, by the last count, 15 or 20 licensed equity crowdfunding platforms in Australia. There's really only 3 or 4 that operate at any scale. There's a few that have come and gone, a few trying different things. There is one called MyCrowd, which is an evolution of the New Zealand platform called Pledge Me that is trying to focus on women-backed startups. They've had one successful deal and they've had a few fail. I think, you know, it's really important. While, you know, I think that's a very admirable thing. Part of what people need to look at and decide is the audience that they can reach out to and the platform they're using and how they can help them tap into that. So we've now raised over $85 million for 120 companies over the past sort of 7 or 8 years. So we've got a lot of experience and track record. I would suggest to anyone, do your research, look at different platforms, look if there's maybe been similar companies to yours. If there's been a direct competitor, it might be hard to raise on the same platform if there's sort of too soon after your competitors raise, but get a sense of what companies might do and reach out and ask and interact, and even, you know, try and speak to some founders of companies that have raised on the platform previously. You know, we often, one of our more recent great success stories, and touching on your point from earlier, is to, you know, a female founder who, I'm not sure if I'm going to get much support. Anita from Hero Packaging, which is a sustainable packaging brand for e-commerce. She didn't think that they were going to have a lot of support in their network. They raised $1.5 million very, very successfully. So we point to her as a success story. We often recommend her. She's great. She's got experience and she's an amazing natural born marketer. So yeah, it's worth looking at different platforms, doing a bit of research and seeing what's out there and who might be suitable for you and your business.
Yeah. And as Liza mentioned before, like, we women is good in relationship building and connections. So I also, like, as a woman founder myself, I highly encourage you to reach out to chat, because there's, yeah, just talk and then get some feelings about the platform and get some understanding around what it is and how it works. So feel free to reach out to us, and if you want to chat anything around our aspect or anything about different platforms, so we're more than happy to support you. So we've got another question here for Katie. So audience asked, like, is there any plans for the different states across Australia to do some collaborations together? Like, you know, so because different states have wonderful programs and different initiatives, is there like a plan, or is that a possibility that there is a collaborative approach there?
Not quite. Business.gov has a list which lists out what each state is doing, and Austrade often use that as their sort of, so Austrade covers the federal arm of kind of what I do, export success. So business.gov is probably a great central place. And don't get me wrong, I know, like, I put myself in the founder's shoes. It's so confusing. States doing this, federal's doing this other state's doing this. And I might just quickly answer the next question on the, in order to be eligible for New South Wales services, you have to have a New South Wales ABN. Although if you do have a significant operation in New South Wales but are headquartered somewhere else, we may consider that as part of the program, because you are adding to our economy. But generally speaking, the ABN is where the divide is there. Sorry. Yeah.
But I understand, like, speaking of the finder, so I know, like, Australian government have quite a good, like, grant finder and different types of program finder. We can possibly, like, send it to audience later on. It's like, there are a couple of, what I know is like grantfinder.com.au and all these, like, they kind of have a list out, like, what kind of grants available across states. And also, like, what kind of grants available for different industry. Or there are grants particularly for female. There are also grants particularly for doing a particular, you know, social cause or industry. So there are quite a consolidated place that you can look up, like, you know, what kind of things will be available to you.
And I should say there's more to come from New South Wales. We are basically re-energizing our MVP grant. So that'll be announced formally in a month's time, the 17th of November. So yes, grant finder, I think is great. Yeah, it's tricky because these things get updated all the time, but just keep an eye on the space. And I know it's hard to navigate, but there's amazing programs that come out. It's just trying to find everything can be tricky. I admit that, yeah.
But no, but I did do it myself. Like I find some grants before, like, yeah, it's okay. So what my takeaway for the audience is, yeah, it might sound challenging or quite a lot of information there, but if you sit down, you give yourself an hour just to look up and do some Google search, you probably will find something. And I also know there are communities out there supporting founders to particularly find, grant that's suitable for them or programs that's suitable for them. So there are information there available. All right, so I think we cover it more, and it's a great timing. It's 1:03. So thank you very, very much for our incredible panelists today and giving us insight around different aspects. And as we all say, like, if after this summit or after this panel, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I think we are here to help you, regardless you're female founders or you're founders in the startup economy, or you are people who want to get involved and support others. We are here. So don't be afraid. I'm sure we are all happy for you to ping us in the LinkedIn or send us email. Yeah, just reach out. And thank you again for the time for our panelists here. And so happy and so excited to have you. And don't forget, we also have another panel tomorrow talking about going global and how you can prepare yourself to expand your businesses. And we also have a grand female founder grand pitch night tomorrow night evening. It's a live event, it's a live stream, but we also have in person in the Mic Drop South Melbourne. So you can still grab a ticket now. And we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. So thank you very much for Liza, Katie, and Johnny for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.